Captain Jiwon stood on the bridge of the UES Valkyrie, watching the stars through the main screen. The ship was the most powerful warship humanity had ever built. Its black hull gleamed with weapon ports and shield generators. Inside, the crew worked at their stations with quiet efficiency. The communications panel beeped. Navigator Minho looked up from his console. "Captain, we have an incoming message. It's from the Outer Rim." "Put it through," Jiwon said. The screen flickered and showed a young woman with dirt on her face and fear in her eyes. Behind her, strange red rocks glowed in the distance. "This is Dr. Kira Lee, human xenobiologist stationed on Vextar Prime," she said, her voice shaking. "If anyone receives this message, please help us. The Shalamon Empire has invaded this world. They're hunting the native people like animals." Jiwon stepped closer to the screen. He had heard of Vextar Prime. It was what humans called a death world, a planet so dangerous that most alien species couldn't survive there for more than a few hours. Kira continued. "The Vextari people are incredible. They're 8 feet tall and stronger than anything I've ever seen. But the Shalamon have ships and energy weapons. They're capturing survivors to sell as slaves. The Galactic Council says this world is too dangerous for a rescue mission. They've abandoned us." The message showed scenes of destruction, burning cities made of black stone, strange creatures that looked like armored lizards running through toxic swamps, carrying wounded companions, ships in the sky firing down at them with bright beams. "There are maybe 50,000 Vexitari left out of millions," Kira said. "They're hiding in the deep caves where even the Shalman are afraid to go. I'm with a group led by their war chief. Please, if you can hear this, we need evacuation ships, not just for me, but for all the survivors." The message ended. The bridge was quiet for a moment. Weapons Officer Yuna turned in her chair. "Captain, Vextar Prime is 3 days away at maximum speed. But according to our files, that planet is deadly. The air is full of acid. The gravity is twice Earth normal. There are predators there that could eat a tank." Chief Engineer Dohyun nodded. "The Shalamon must really want those aliens if they're willing to fight on a world like that." Medical Officer Somin pulled up data on her screen. "The Vextari are listed as apex predators. Their homeworld has turned them into perfect killing machines. No wonder someone wants to use them as gladiator slaves." Jiwon walked to the front of the bridge. He stared at the stars and thought about the message. The Galactic Council was a group of soft alien species who lived on garden worlds. They thought any planet with real weather was too dangerous. Earth was considered a moderate death world by their standards. "Minho, plot a course for Vextar Prime," Jiwon said. "Yes, sir. Should I contact command and request evacuation ships?" Jiwon turned to face his crew. "No, we're not going to evacuate anyone." The bridge crew looked confused. Yuna raised an eyebrow. "Sir?" "Think about it," Jiwon said. "Dr. Lee's message will reach other species too. They'll all say the same thing. Too dangerous, not worth the risk. But what happens to the next death world, the Shalamon attack? And the one after that?" Do-Yun understood first. "You want to solve the problem." "Exactly. The Shalamon think they can hunt deathworlders because no one will stop them. They're about to learn they're wrong." Soman looked worried. "Captain, we're one ship against an entire invasion fleet." "One human ship," Jiwon corrected. "There's a difference." Yuna smiled. "What are your orders, sir?" "We're going to show the galaxy what happens when you threaten a death world." "Minho, maximum speed." "Do-Yun, start checking our weapon systems." "Yuna, I want firing solutions for every scenario you can think of." "What about backup?" Minho asked. We don't need backup. We need to send a message. The Shalman think Deathworlders are good for slavery because they're tough and can fight. They're about to discover that some Deathworlders don't just fight. They win wars. The crew began working with new energy. They had served under Captain Jiwan for 3 years. They knew he didn't make decisions lightly. If he said they could handle this alone, they believed him. As the Valkyrie jumped to hyperspace, Jiwan thought about Dr. Lee's message. She had asked for evacuation ships. She wanted someone to rescue the survivors and take them to safety. It was a reasonable request from someone who didn't understand how humans thought. Humans didn't run from bullies. They ended them. The ship's intelligence officer, Hyejin, appeared on the bridge with a data pad. Captain, I've been analyzing Shalman communications. They have 12 heavy cruisers in the Vextar system. Each one carries about 5,000 troops. What's their mission profile? Jiwan asked. Strip mining and slave collection. They're taking everything valuable from the planet and capturing any Vextari they can find alive. According to their schedules, they plan to finish in 2 weeks and move to the next Deathworld system. Jiwan nodded. They're treating this like a business operation. That's their first mistake. What's their second mistake? Yuna asked. They assumed no one would care about a bunch of aliens on a Deathworld. They didn't consider that another Deathworld species might object. The journey to Vextar Prime took 3 days. During that time, the crew prepared for battle. They studied Shalman tactics and weaknesses. They learned about Vexitari culture and biology. Most importantly, they planned. When they finally dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Vextar system, the first thing they saw was smoke. 3 of the system's moons were covered in mining operations. The planet itself glowed red with volcanic activity in burning cities. Sensor sweep, Jiwan ordered. Minho worked at his console. 12 Shalman cruisers, just as intelligence reported. They're in high orbit, staying away from the planet's atmosphere. Looks like they're using shuttles and drop ships for surface operations. They're afraid of the planet, Do-Yoon observed. Smart of them. Cowardly of them, Yuna corrected. They're fighting from space because they know they'd lose on the ground. Jiwan smiled. The Shalman had made their third mistake. They were fighting the Vextari like they were any other species. But Deathworlders weren't beaten by superior technology. They were beaten by superior Deathworlders. Communications, can you reach Dr. Lee? Jiwan asked. Hyejin tried several frequencies. Got her, sir. She's in a cave system about 200 kilometers from the largest Vextari settlement. Tell her we're here, and tell her we didn't bring evacuation ships. Sir? Tell her we brought something better. Tell her we brought humans. The message went down to the planet's surface, bouncing through the interference caused by volcanic activity and Shalman jamming signals. Somewhere in the depths of a toxic world, a scared scientist would soon learn that help had arrived. But Jiwan knew the real help wasn't the Valkyrie or its weapons. The real help was the idea that Deathworlders stood together. Today, the Vextari would learn they weren't alone in the galaxy. Today, they would meet their cousins from Earth. The Valkyrie moved through the asteroid belt at the edge of the Vextar system. Captain Jiwan watched the main screen as his ship's sensors painted a picture of hell. 3 moons glowed with the heat of massive mining operations. The planet itself looked like a ball of fire and poison. Detailed scan report, Jiwan ordered. Tae-hyun, the ship's xenospecialist, stood at his station reading data. Vextar Prime has gravity twice that of Earth. The atmosphere is 30% sulfur compounds. Surface temperature ranges from 200 degrees in the cool zones to over 400 near the volcanic regions. The oceans are acid with a pH of 2. How do things live there? Soman asked. Very carefully, Taehyun replied. And very dangerously. The Vextari evolved as apex predators. They hunt creatures that would terrify most galactic species. I'm reading life signs for something they call flame worms, basically dragons that breathe actual fire. Yuna whistled. No wonder the Shalmon are staying in orbit. Show me the Vextari data, Jiwon said. The main screen changed to show images from Dr. Lee's research files. The Vextari looked like giant armored lizards that walked on two legs. Their skin was covered in natural plates that could stop most. Small weapons. They had claws that could cut through metal and jaws full of teeth like knives. Average height is 8 feet, Taehyun continued. Weight around 400 pounds, all muscle and bone. They can run 40 miles per hour and jump, 30 feet straight up. Their reaction speed is 3 times faster than human normal. Weapons? Yuna asked. They don't need weapons. They are weapons. But they do use tools. Mostly things made from the bones and hides of creatures they hunt. Some metal work, but nothing fancy. They never developed spaceflight because they had no reason to leave their world. Jiwon studied the images. The Vextari looked dangerous, but their eyes showed intelligence. These weren't mindless beasts. They were people who happened to be perfect killing machines. What about their society? He asked. Tribal structure based on hunting groups. Each tribe has a war chief who leads them in battle and major hunts. They respect strength and courage above everything else. According to Dr. Lee's notes, they have concepts of honor and loyalty that are very important to them. Minho looked up from his navigation console. Captain, I'm detecting 12 Shalman ships in orbit. They're maintaining a safe distance from the planet's upper atmosphere. Looks like they're using dropships to ferry troops and equipment to the surface. Show me their operations, Jiwon said. The screen switched to a tactical display. Red dots showed Shalmon positions across 3 continents. They had established bases near major Vextari cities, but only in areas where the environment was less deadly. They're being very careful, Hyejin observed. Each base has environmental shields and climate control. Their troops wear full protective suits when they go outside. What are they doing down there? Jiwon asked. Taehyun pulled up more data. Mining operations in 12 locations. They're after something called Vextarium, a rare metal that only forms under extreme conditions. But the main operation seems to be hunting Vextari. The screen showed footage from Shalmon surveillance drones. Alien soldiers in sealed suits were chasing groups of Vextari through toxic swamps and volcanic fields. The natives were fighting back, but energy weapons were cutting them down. Estimated Shalomon forces? Jiwon asked. About 60,000 troops across all bases, Minho replied. Plus support staff and mining equipment. Each cruiser carries around 5,000 soldiers. And the Vextari, Taehyun looked grim. Dr. Lee estimates maybe 50,000 survivors out of an original population of 20 million. They're hiding in the deepest parts of their world, places even the Shalmon are afraid to go. Jiwon nodded. The math was simple and ugly. The Shalmon were winning through superior technology and orbital support. The Vexitari were tough enough to survive their own world, but that didn't help against energy weapons fired from orbit. Sir, Hyejin said, I'm intercepting Shalmon communications. They're not just hunting randomly. They have specific quotas. Explain. Each base is required to capture at least 1,000 live Vextari. They're planning to transport them to gladiator worlds throughout Shalmon space. The Emperor apparently wants to see how Deathworld predators fight in his arenas. The bridge went quiet. Every human on the ship understood what that meant. The Shalman weren't just conquering Vextar Prime. They were destroying an entire civilization for entertainment. There's more, Hyejin continued. This is a test operation. If it succeeds, they plan to hit 6 more Deathworld systems over the next year. Yuna turned in her chair. Captain, we need to make contact with the Vextari survivors. Agreed. Communications? Can you reach Dr. Lee again? The main screen flickered and showed the inside of a cave. Strange formations glowed with natural phosphorescence. Dr. Lee appeared, looking tired but determined. Dr. Lee, this is Captain G1 of the UES Valkyrie. Are you in a secure location? As secure as anywhere on this world, she replied. The Vexitari have taken me to their deepest sanctuary. It's in a cave system that goes down nearly a mile. The temperature here is over 300 degrees, and the air would kill most species in minutes. But not humans, Jiwon observed. Lee smiled for the first time. No, not humans. The Vextari were amazed when I told them about Earth. They consider our homeworld to be pleasantly mild by their standards. We need to meet with their leadership. Can you arrange that? War Chief. Vexcaran is here with me. He speaks some standard, but Captain, they don't understand why you came. I told them humans sent one ship, and they think you're here to evacuate me. Tell them we're here to help them win. Lee's expression changed. Win? Captain, there are 12 cruisers up there. Each one could destroy this entire cave system. Dr. Lee, how long have you been studying the Vextari? 3 years. Then you know what they're capable of. You've seen them hunt creatures that could destroy a tank. You've watched them survive in conditions that would kill most alien species. The only reason they're losing is because they're fighting the wrong kind of war. Lee began to understand. You want to teach them to fight like humans. I want to teach them to win like humans. There's a difference. Can you set up a meeting? I'll try. But Captain, War Chief Vexcaran has never seen a human before. He might not trust you. That's fine. We don't need his trust yet. We just need his attention. The communication ended. Jiwon turned to his crew. Do-hyun, I want you to start manufacturing equipment. Weapons, armor, communications gear. Scale everything up for Vextari physiology. What kind of weapons, sir? The kind that can punch through. Shalamon armor. The kind that will make the aliens think twice about hunting Deathworlders. Yuna smiled. Are we going down to the surface? A small team. Just enough to make an impression. Soman, I want you to prepare medical supplies. If we're going to be allies, we should be helpful allies. Sir, Minho said, the environmental conditions down there will be challenging but survivable. Remember, we're Deathworlders too. It's time we started acting like it. As the crew prepared for the mission, Jiwon looked out at the burning planet below. Somewhere in those caves, an entire civilization was fighting for survival. They were brave and strong, but they were losing. That was about to change. The Vextari were about to learn something the rest of the galaxy already knew. Humans didn't just survive hostile environments, they conquered them. The shuttle bay of the Valkyrie hummed with activity. Captain G1 checked his equipment one last time while his team prepared for the descent to Vextar Prime. The environmental suits were modified to handle the planet's extreme conditions, but they were lighter than what most alien species would need. Final equipment check, G1 said. Sun Wu, the ship's cultural attaché, carried translation equipment and gifts for the Vextari. Translator is working perfectly, Captain. I've also brought some human foods that should be safe for their biology. Yuna wore combat armor and carried a pulse rifle. Weapons check complete. I've got enough firepower to handle anything we might meet down there. Salmon loaded medical supplies into a portable unit. Emergency medical kit is ready, though according to the data, Vextari heal much faster than humans do. Do-Hyun carried a case of sample weapons. I've got 3 different rifle designs scaled for Vextari use, plus some armor plates that should fit over their natural shell. Remember, Ji-Won said, we're not going down there as conquerors or saviors. We're going as equals. The Vextari are apex predators on one of the most dangerous worlds in the galaxy. They deserve our respect. The shuttle launched from the Valkyrie and headed for the planet's surface. As they descended through the upper atmosphere, the temperature readings began climbing rapidly. Outside the windows, clouds of sulfur and acid swirled in patterns that would have been beautiful if they weren't deadly. Landing zone confirmed, Sunwoo reported. Dr. Lee is guiding us to a stable area near the cave entrance. The shuttle touched down on black rock that glowed with heat. Through the windows, they could see a landscape that looked like something from a nightmare. Pools of lava bubbled nearby. Strange plants with metallic leaves grew from cracks in the stone. In the distance, something large moved through a cloud of toxic gas. Environmental readings? Ji-Won asked. Temperature is 340 degrees Fahrenheit. Atmospheric pressure is twice Earth normal. Air composition is interesting. Lots of sulfur compounds, but we can breathe it with filters. They left the shuttle and walked toward a crack in the mountainside. The heat hit them immediately, even through their suits. It was like walking into an oven, but a survivable oven. Ji-Won realized that most alien species would be dead within minutes in this environment. Dr. Lee appeared at the cave entrance. She wore a lighter suit than the humans, having adapted to the conditions over 3 years. Captain Ji-Won, I can't believe you actually came down here. Dr. Lee. Is War Chief Vexkaran ready to meet us? He's waiting inside. But Captain, I should warn you. He's not what you'd expect from a tribal leader. The Vextari don't think like humans do. They followed Lee into the cave system. The tunnels were carved from solid rock, but not by tools. Claw marks on the walls showed that the Vextari had dug these passages by hand over generations. The deeper they went, the hotter it became. The walls themselves glowed with heat. Strange formations dripped from the ceiling, creating a natural cathedral of stone and fire. Here, Lee said, stopping at a large chamber. War Chief Vexkaran was waiting for them. He stood 8 feet tall and looked exactly like the images they had seen. But seeing him in person was different. His natural armor plates gleamed in the cave light. His eyes were intelligent and cautious. When he moved, it was with the fluid grace of a perfect predator. He spoke in a deep, rumbling voice. The translation device converted his words to standard. So these are the humans, he said. You are smaller than I expected. Ji-Won stepped forward and removed his helmet. The hot air hit his face like a blast from a furnace, but he didn't flinch. We're usually smaller than the people we help. Size isn't everything. Vexkaran's eyes widened slightly. You breathe our air without fear. Our worlds are similar in some ways. We understand heat and danger. The war chief walked in a circle around the humans, studying them. Dr. Lee tells me you come from a death world, but you look soft. Where are your claws? Your armor? Yuna smiled and drew her pulse rifle in one smooth motion. She fired at a rock formation across the chamber. The energy beam cut through solid stone like it was paper. We don't need claws. We make better ones. Vexkaran made a sound that might have been laughter. Interesting tools, but tools break. What happens when your weapons fail? Do-Hyun opened his equipment case and pulled out one of the scaled-up rifles he had built. Then we make new ones. This was designed for your people. Want to try it?" The war chief took the weapon carefully. It looked tiny in his massive hands, but when he shouldered it, the proportions were perfect. He aimed at another rock formation and fired. The beam was twice as powerful as Yuna's rifle. The target didn't just break, it vaporized. "Now that," Vexcaran said, "is a proper weapon." Sunwoo stepped forward with his gifts. "War Chief, we brought food from our world, a gesture of friendship between hunters." He opened containers of dried meat, spiced with earth seasonings. The Vextari leader tried a small piece, and his expression changed. "This has flavor, strength. Your people know how to prepare food for warriors." "We know how to prepare for war too," Jiwan said. "The Shalman think they can hunt your people because you don't have ships or energy weapons. They're wrong. Explain." Jiwan activated a portable hologram projector. It showed the Shalman positions across the planet. "Your enemies are fighting you like you're any other species. They stay in orbit and send down troops in protective suits. They avoid the dangerous areas of your world. Because they are weak," Vexcaran said. "Exactly. But that's also their weakness. They're not using your world against you. They're afraid of it. We can change that." The hologram shifted to show human tactical analysis. Every Shalman base is positioned away from volcanic activity, toxic zones, and major predator territories. They're trying to make parts of your world safe for themselves. "They will never be safe here," Vexcaran said with certainty. "That's what we're counting on. Dr. Lee, show him the patrol footage." Lee activated another display. It showed a Shalman patrol moving through a relatively stable area. The aliens were heavily armored and moved slowly. "They can't run in those suits," Yuna observed. "Can't climb, can't fight hand-to-hand. If they lose their weapons, they're helpless." Vexcaran studied the display. "You want to hunt them?" "We want to teach you to hunt them the way humans hunt," Jiwan corrected. "Your people are incredible individual fighters, but humans hunt in packs. We use tactics and coordination." Samin opened her medical kit. "We can also help with your wounded. Human medicine combined with Vextari healing ability could save lives." The war chief was quiet for a long moment. Around the chamber, other Vextari had appeared silently. Warriors, elders, younger fighters, all of them watched the humans with curious eyes. "Why?" Vexcaran finally asked. "Why do you help us? What do you gain?" Jiwan looked him directly in the eyes. "Because the Shalman are bullies. They think they can attack Deathworlders because no one will stop them. If they succeed here, they'll attack other Deathworld species. Eventually, they might attack our world. So you fight them now to protect yourselves later. We fight them now because it's the right thing to do, and because Deathworlders should stick together." Vexcaran made that laughing sound again. "Deathworlders. I like this word. Yes, we are all children of deadly worlds." He turned to his warriors and spoke in his own language. There was discussion, gestures, what might have been arguments. Finally, he turned back to the humans. "We will try your way of hunting, but understand. If this fails, if your tactics get my people killed, I will hold you responsible." "Fair enough," Jiwan said. "If our tactics fail, we'll die right alongside your people." This seemed to satisfy the war chief. "Then we are agreed. When do we begin?" "Now," Jiwan said. "The first lesson is this. The Shalman think they're hunting you. It's time to teach them who the real predators are." Outside the cave, something roared in the distance. It was a sound that would have terrified most species. But the humans and Vextari barely noticed. They were too busy planning a war. The training ground was a flat area of rock near the Vextari cave system. Heat rose from the stone in visible waves, pools of acid bubbled nearby, and strange flying creatures circled overhead like vultures. It was the perfect place to prepare for war. Captain Jiwan watched as Yuna demonstrated human combat tactics to a group of Vextari warriors. The aliens were fast learners, but they had to unlearn centuries of fighting as individuals. "Remember," Yuna called out, "you're not hunting alone anymore. When the warrior on your left moves, you cover him. When you advance, someone watches your back." One of the younger Vextari, a fighter named Kethvar, raised his hand. "But what if the enemy focuses fire on one position? We become easy targets." "That's why we move as a unit," Yuna replied. She signaled to 5 human Marines who had come down from the ship. "Show them pattern 7. The humans spread out in a loose formation and began advancing across the rocky ground. When one Marine fired at an imaginary target, the others moved to support him. When the enemy returned fire, they scattered and regrouped from a different angle. "You see," Yuna said, "individual skill combined with group tactics. The enemy can't predict where the next attack will come from." War Chief Vexkaran nodded approvingly. "This has possibilities. But what about our natural advantages?" Do-hyun stepped forward with a new piece of equipment. "That's why we're not just teaching you tactics. We're giving you better tools." He held up a rifle designed specifically for Vextari physiology. It was larger and more powerful than human weapons, with controls positioned for clawed hands. "This fires plasma bolts that can punch through Shalamon armor," Do-hyun explained. "It's powered by thermal cells that recharge from your body heat. The hotter you fight, the more shots you get." Kethvar took the weapon and examined it. "It feels alive in my hands. That's because it was designed for your people. Human weapons work for us because we built them. This was built for you." Soman was working with wounded Vexitari in a medical station set up near the caves. She had discovered that human surgical techniques, when combined with Vextari healing ability, could repair injuries that would normally take weeks to heal. The key is to align the bone correctly and let your natural healing take over, she explained to a Vextari who had lost an arm in a Shalamon attack. "Human medicine provides precision. Your biology provides speed." Meanwhile, Min-Suk was working with War Chief Vexkaran on strategic planning. They had spread a holographic map across a flat stone, showing Shalmon positions throughout the region. "The enemy has 3 major weaknesses," Min-Suk said. "First, they can't operate effectively in the most dangerous areas of your world. Second, their equipment requires constant maintenance in this environment. Third, they depend on supply lines from orbit." Vexkaran studied the map. "You want to attack their supplies. I want to force them to come to us. Right now, they choose where to fight. They pick the safest locations and stay away from the real dangers of your world. We're going to change that." Jae-min, the environmental specialist, had been exploring the surrounding area with Vextari guides. He returned with exciting news. "Captain, you need to see this," he called out. He led a group to a ridge overlooking a valley filled with toxic gas. The gas moved in slow, hypnotic patterns, beautiful and deadly. "According to our guides, this gas forms naturally when certain underground minerals heat up," Jamin explained. "It's heavier than air, so it collects in low areas. Harmless to Vextari, but it would kill most other species in seconds." "Even through environmental suits?" Jiwan asked. "The gas is corrosive. It would eat through standard seals in minutes. War Chief Vex Karan smiled, showing teeth like knives. The spirits of the deep caves have given us a weapon. Better than that, Jimin said. We can predict where it will form and when. If we could lure Shalamon forces into these valleys at the right time, they would die without us firing a shot. Vex Karan finished. The first joint operation was planned for the next day. A Shalmon mining base had been established near a dormant volcano. It was defended by 300 alien troops and had orbital support from 2 cruisers. The base is positioned in the safest area they could find, Minsuk explained to the combined human Vextari strike team, but safe is relative on this world. The plan was complex but elegant. Human technology would create the opening. Vextari, knowledge of their world, would provide the killing ground. At dawn, the strike team moved into position. 20 humans and 50 Vextari worked together, moving through terrain that would have killed most alien species. They used natural cave systems to approach the base without being detected. Phase 1, Jiwon said into his communicator. High above, the Valkyrie fired a single shot at the volcano. Not enough to damage the mountain, but enough to trigger seismic activity that had been building for months. The ground shook. The Shalmon base's environmental shields flickered as power systems struggled to compensate. Emergency alarms sounded throughout the facility. Phase 2, Jiwon said. Yuna's team opened fire from elevated positions around the base. Their weapons were set to specific frequencies that interfered with Shalmon communications. The aliens couldn't call for orbital support or coordinate their defense. Phase 3, Jiwon said. Vex Karan's warriors emerged from hidden positions and began their attack. But this wasn't the wild charge the Shalmon expected. It was a coordinated assault using human tactics and Vextari strength. The aliens tried to fall back to defensive positions, but the humans had anticipated this. Every retreat route led through areas where the seismic activity had triggered gas vents and unstable ground. Shalmon troops found themselves trapped between Vextari warriors who could survive anything the planet threw at them and humans who had turned the planet itself into a weapon. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the mining base was completely destroyed. 300 Shalmon troops were dead. The strike team had taken 0 casualties. How? War Chief Vex Karan asked as they surveyed the destruction. You taught us about your world, Jiwon replied. We taught you about tactics. Together, we're unstoppable. News of the victory spread quickly through both human and Vextari communications. On the surface, it was a successful raid against a mining operation. But everyone understood the real message. The Shalmon had assumed they could hunt Deathworlders because Deathworlders fought like animals. They had just learned that some Deathworlders fought like humans. In orbit, Admiral Kethmore received reports of the base's destruction with growing anger. He had lost an entire facility to what his intelligence called primitive natives with stolen weapons. Increase security at all remaining bases, he ordered, and prepare for orbital bombardment. If these animals want to hide in their caves, we'll collapse the caves on top of them. But Captain Jiwon was already planning the next phase of the war. The Shalmon thought they were dealing with a rebellion. They were about to discover they were facing an evolution. War Chief Vex Karan stood beside him, watching Shalmon ships move in orbit. What happens when they bring more ships? Then we teach them that space is just another hunting ground, Jiwon replied. After all, humans didn't become Deathworlders by staying on the ground. The war chief made that rumbling laugh. I begin to understand why the galaxy fears your species. They don't fear us yet, Jiwan said, but they will. The emergency meeting took place in the depths of the Vextari cave system, where even the most advanced Shalmon sensors couldn't penetrate. Captain Jiwan sat across from War Chief Vexcaron while their advisors gathered around a holographic display showing the latest intelligence. The situation has changed, Hiegin reported from the Valkyrie via secure communication. 3 days ago, news of our victory reached other Shalmon colonies. Yesterday, slave revolts began on 4 different worlds. The hologram showed star charts, with red indicators spreading across Shalmon space like a virus. Deathworld species that have been enslaved for years are fighting back, she continued. The Krextani broke out of their gladiator arenas. The Nethkari destroyed 2 prison worlds. Even some non-Deathworld species are rebelling. War Chief Vexcaron leaned forward. Our victory has inspired others. It's also made us a target, Jiwan said grimly. Show them the fleet movements. The star chart changed to focus on local space. A large formation of ships was moving toward the Vextar system. Admiral Kethmore has called in reinforcements, Hiegin reported. 24 heavy cruisers, 8 battleships, and 2 dreadnoughts. They'll arrive in 18 hours. Minho's voice came through the communicator from the Valkyrie's bridge. Captain, we're looking at 60-to-1 odds. Even with our advantages, the Valkyrie can't fight that many ships. We're not going to fight them, Jiwan said. We're going to hunt them. He stood and walked to the holographic display. The Shalmon are making the same mistake they made on the surface. They're bringing a fleet designed to fight other fleets. But we're not a fleet. We're one ship with advantages they don't understand. War Chief Vexcaron studied the display. Explain. Every battle the Shalmon have ever fought has been in empty space between fleets of similar ships. They use formations and tactics designed for that kind of warfare. But Vextar Prime isn't empty space. Jiwan gestured to the planet's representation. Your world has 3 moons, an asteroid belt, and solar activity that interferes with sensors. Most importantly, it has environmental conditions that make close approach dangerous for normal ships. The Valkyrie is not a normal ship. Vexcaron. Observed? Exactly. We were built to operate in dangerous environments. Our shields can handle solar radiation. Our hull can survive atmospheric entry on Deathworlds. We can go places their ships can't follow. Seojun, the demolitions expert, had been working with Vexitari engineers for the past week. His voice came through the communicator with excitement. Captain, we've successfully tested the orbital mines. The Vextari have minerals on their world that become incredibly explosive when exposed to hard vacuum. We've seeded the approach routes with devices that look like natural asteroids. How many? Jiwan asked. 237 mines scattered through the asteroid belt and around the moons. When Shalmon ships try to establish orbital positions, they're going to get a very unpleasant surprise. War Chief Vexcaron made his rumbling laugh. Using our world as a weapon even in space. I approve. But Jiwan's expression remained serious. That will hurt them, but it won't stop them. Admiral Kethmore has enough ships to absorb heavy losses and still overwhelm us. We need to be smarter. Hana, the systems analyst, had been studying Shalmon, fleet doctrine. Captain, I found something interesting. Shalmon battle groups always maintain formation integrity. They never separate their ships by more than a few hundred kilometers. Because they rely on overlapping defensive fire, Yuna added from her position near the cave entrance. If they spread out, individual ships become vulnerable. But if they stay together, they become a large target, Jiwan mused. Show me the solar activity forecast. The display changed to show radiation patterns from the system's star. Violent solar flares erupted in regular cycles, creating electromagnetic storms that could disrupt ship systems. There, Jamin pointed to a particularly intense flare. In 14 hours, the star will produce a Class 5 solar event. Radiation levels will spike throughout the inner system. Most ships would retreat to safe distance, Minho observed. But the Valkyrie can handle it. And while their fleet is blinded by radiation, we strike, Ji-Wan concluded. One ship against 34, but only if they can see us coming. The plan took shape quickly. The Valkyrie would use the solar storm as cover to approach the Shalman fleet. Hidden among the asteroids and radiation, they would pick off individual ships before the enemy could respond. What about the ground forces? War Chief Vexcaron asked. That's where your people come in, Ji-Wan said. While we're dealing with the fleet, Shalman commanders will try to use orbital bombardment to smoke you out of the caves. We need you to hit their ground bases during the confusion. Gladly. But, Captain, what happens if your ship is destroyed? My people cannot fight orbital bombardment indefinitely. Ji-Wan met the war chief's eyes. Then you do what your people have always done. You survive, you adapt, and you make the enemy pay for every victory. The next 18 hours passed in tense preparation. The Valkyrie's crew worked around the clock to modify their ship for the coming battle. Weapon systems were recalibrated for hit-and-run attacks. Shield generators were tuned to handle both enemy fire and solar radiation. On the surface, Vextari warriors prepared for the largest coordinated assault in their history. Dozens of tribes had gathered, putting aside territorial disputes to face the common enemy. They carried human-made weapons and wore armor designed by Do Yun's engineering team. When the Shalman fleet finally arrived, it was with overwhelming force. Admiral Kethmore's flagship, a massive dreadnought called the Bone Crusher, led the formation. Smaller ships spread out in a defensive pattern that covered thousands of cubic kilometers. Impressive, War Chief Vexcaron admitted, watching the display from the cave command center. Impressive and predictable, Ji-Wan replied from the Valkyrie's bridge. Minho, take us into the asteroid field. Use the mining debris as cover. The Valkyrie slipped between chunks of rock and metal, invisible to Shalman sensors. Above them, the star began its violent eruption. Radiation washed over the system like a tide of invisible fire. Solar storm intensity increasing, Che-Young reported from her reconnaissance station. Shalman fleet is moving to defensive positions behind their largest ships. Perfect. They're clustering together just like Hana predicted. Yuna, target the ship on the outer edge of their formation. Locked on, Captain. Heavy cruiser, minimal escort. Fire! The Valkyrie's main guns spoke with the voice of human engineering. Plasma beams reached across space and struck the Shalman cruiser's shields. The enemy ship staggered under the assault, its defensive screens flickering. They're trying to turn and fight, Yuna reported. But their sensors are blinded by the radiation. Hit them again. The second volley punched through the cruiser's shields and tore into its hull. Atmosphere vented into space as the ship began to spin out of control. First kill confirmed, Minho announced. Shalman fleet is trying to locate us, but they're shooting at shadows. For the next 6 hours, the Valkyrie played a deadly game of hide-and-seek among the asteroids. They would appear long enough to destroy a ship, then vanish back into the Edol storm. The Shalman fleet began to spread out, trying to cover more area, but this only made them more vulnerable. 8th confirmed kill, Yuna reported as another enemy ship exploded. Admiral Kethamore is pulling his remaining ships back to high orbit. Let him run, Ji-Wan said. It's time for Phase 2. Contact War Chief Vex Karan. On the planet's surface, the coordinated assault began. Vextari warriors emerged from caves and hidden positions across 3 continents. They struck Shalmon bases with human tactics and alien fury, moving too fast for orbital bombardment to target them effectively. But Admiral Kethmore was far from defeated. As his remaining fleet regrouped beyond the radiation storm, he made a decision that would escalate the conflict beyond anything either side had imagined. "If we cannot capture these Deathworlders," he announced to his fleet, "then we will make an example of them. Prepare the planet killers." The 3 moons of Vextar Prime moved into perfect alignment for the first time in 2 years. Deep beneath the planet's surface, ancient forces stirred. Volcanic activity increased. Tidal forces pulled at underground seas of molten rock. Most importantly, the planet's apex predators began to wake. Captain Jiwan stood in the command chamber deep within the Vextari cave system, watching sensor readings that defied belief. The planetary activity was unlike anything in human databases. "Explain. What's happening?" he said to War Chief Vex Karan. The massive alien gestured to ancient wall carvings that showed creatures of nightmare proportions. "Every 24 months the moons align. The deep dwellers rise from the molten cores. The sky hunters descend from the upper peaks. For 3 days, even we Vextari retreat to the deepest sanctuaries." Wu Jin, the xenobiology expert who had come down from the Valkyrie, studied the carvings with fascination. "These creatures, some of them are larger than our ship. The flame worms can grow to 300 meters in length," Vex Karan confirmed. "The stone crushers have shells that can deflect orbital bombardment. The shadow stalkers move so fast they seem to teleport." "And they're all waking up now?" Jiwan asked. "The hunter's moon calls to them. For 3 days, they will roam freely across our world, hunting anything that moves. It is our most sacred time, when the greatest warriors prove themselves by surviving in the open." Jiwan smiled. He was beginning to see possibilities that Admiral Kethmore had never considered. "War Chief, these creatures, do they distinguish between Vexatari and aliens?" "They hunt anything made of meat. But we know how to avoid them, how to hide from them, how to redirect their anger toward our enemies." High above the planet, Admiral Kethmore was planning his final assault. The solar storm had ended, and his remaining 26 ships were in perfect position for orbital bombardment. He had lost 8 vessels to the human ship's guerrilla attacks, but that only made him more determined to finish this. "Begin planetary. Bombardment," he ordered. "I want every cave system collapsed, every hiding place turned to glass. If these primitives want to hide underground, we'll bury them there." The first bombardment beams lanced down from orbit, striking the planet's surface with enough energy to vaporize mountains. But something unexpected happened. Instead of simply exploding, the targeted areas began to glow with internal heat. Cracks appeared in the ground, spreading outward like spider webs. "Sir," his sensor officer reported nervously, "the bombardment is triggering seismic events across the planet. Volcanic activity is increasing exponentially." "Continue firing," Kethmore ordered. "A few earthquakes won't save them, but these weren't ordinary earthquakes. The orbital bombardment was artificially triggering the same planetary forces that the moon alignment had begun. Deep beneath the surface, things that had slept for months began to stir. In the cave command center, Jiwan watched the seismic readings with growing excitement. "They're doing our work for us. Every bombardment is waking more creatures." War Chief Vex Karan had donned his ceremonial armor for the hunter's moon. Ancient plates of metal and bone covered his natural shell, inscribed with the names of creatures he had faced and survived. "My warriors are ready," he announced. "We will lead the great hunt against our enemies." "What exactly does that mean?" Jiwan asked. "Watch and learn, human friend." The first creature to emerge was a flame worm, disturbed from its nest in a magma chamber by Shalmon bombardment. It burst from the ground like a living volcano, 300 meters of armored scales and molten breath. Its roar shook the ground. For kilometers in every direction, the creature was magnificent and terrible. Its body glowed with internal heat. Molten rock dripped from its jaws. When it moved, the ground cracked beneath its weight. A Shalman patrol was unfortunate enough to be nearby when the worm emerged. The aliens opened fire with their energy weapons, but the beams simply bounced off the creature's natural armor. The flame worm responded by breathing a stream of superheated gas that melted their vehicles and turned their environmental suits to slag. "By the void," one of the Shalman officers managed to transmit before the communication cut off. "Admiral, Kethmore received reports of similar encounters across the planet. Massive predators were emerging from every bombardment site. His ground forces were being systematically destroyed by creatures that seemed immune to energy weapons. Withdraw all ground personnel to orbital positions," he ordered. "We'll conduct the operation from space." But War Chief Vex Karan had anticipated this response. He led a group of his greatest warriors in the most dangerous hunt of their lives. They were going to ride the great beasts into battle. The technique had been used, perhaps a dozen times in Vexistari history, always during the Hunter's Moon, always by warriors who expected to die gloriously. It required approaching an apex predator during its hunting rage and somehow convincing it that you were an ally rather than prey. Vex Karan approached a stone crusher that had just demolished a Shalman mining facility. The creature was the size of a building, with a shell that could deflect starship weapons and claws that could tear through reinforced steel. The war chief began the ancient ritual, moving in patterns that mimicked the creature's own hunting behavior. He sang war songs in the old language, calling on the spirits of the deep places to witness his courage. The stone crusher turned toward him, eyes like molten gold studying this small figure that dared approach during the great hunt. For a moment, it seemed ready to crush him like an insect. Then something extraordinary happened. The creature lowered its massive head in what might have been recognition or respect. Vex Karan climbed onto its shell, positioning himself between the natural armor plates. Across the planet, other Vextari warriors were attempting the same impossible feat. Some succeeded, many died, but those who succeeded became something the galaxy had never seen. Deathworld cavalry riding apex predators into battle against a spacefaring enemy. From orbit, Admiral Kethmore watched in disbelief as his remaining ground forces were systematically hunted down by creatures that moved like living siege engines. Energy weapons that could punch through starship armor had no effect on the native predators. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "we're receiving distress calls from all surface installations. Something is hunting our troops." The main screen showed footage from a surviving security camera. A shadow stalker moved through a Shalman base so quickly it appeared as a blur. Alien soldiers opened fire, but their shots hit empty air. The creature struck from behind, from above, from angles that should have been impossible. "What is that thing?" Kethmore demanded. "According to our xenobiology database, it's called a shadow stalker, native to Vextar Prime. They're ambush predators that can move at nearly supersonic speeds. Another screen showed a flame worm breathing molten destruction across an entire facility. Shalman troops scattered like insects, their weapons useless against a creature that had evolved to hunt in environments that would kill most life forms. And that, flame worm, they nest in magma chambers and feed on metals and minerals. Our energy weapons actually make them stronger. Admiral Kethmore realized he was facing an enemy he had never prepared for. His fleet was designed to fight other fleets. His troops were trained to battle conventional forces. None of them knew how to deal with apex predators from a deathworld. But the worst was yet to come. Captain G1 had been studying the planetary upheaval and had identified a pattern in the creature movements. "They're not hunting randomly," he told War Chief Vexcaron. "The bombardment is creating sound patterns that attract them to specific areas. You want to control where they hunt," Vexcaron realized. "I want to turn them into guided weapons. The Valkyrie can create sonic pulses that mimic Shalman equipment signatures. We can literally call the monsters down on our enemies." High above the planet, Admiral Kethmore made a decision born of desperation and rage. If conventional bombardment wouldn't work, he would use weapons designed to crack planets. "Prepare the deep core missiles," he ordered. "If we can't capture this world, we'll make sure no one else can have it either." But he had forgotten that the Valkyrie was still out there, hidden among the asteroids, waiting for exactly this kind of opportunity. Captain G1 watched the Shalman fleet reposition for the final assault. "They're going to try to destroy the planet, Una, target their flagship. Captain, they've got 26 ships in formation. Even if we destroy the flagship, the others can complete the bombardment. Then we'll have to make sure they don't get the chance. Minho, plot an intercept course through the heart of their formation. Do-Yun, overload every weapon system we have." "Sir, that will leave us defenseless after one attack," Do-Hyun warned. "It will also announce to the galaxy that humans don't abandon their allies," Ji-Won replied. "Do it." The Valkyrie emerged from the asteroid field at maximum acceleration, every weapon charged beyond safety limits. Below them, Vextari warriors rode apex predators across a world in flames. Above them, an alien fleet prepared to commit genocide. Between them stood one human ship and the unbreakable will of Deathworlders who refused to surrender. The Valkyrie screamed through space toward the Shalman fleet, every weapon system charged beyond safety limits. Captain G1 knew this was a suicide run, but some things were worth dying for. Behind him, his crew worked with the desperate efficiency of people who understood the stakes. "Distance to target?" he called out. 30 seconds to weapons range," Minho replied, his voice steady despite the impossible odds. The Shalman fleet had detected their approach. 26 ships turned to face the single human vessel, their combined firepower enough to destroy a small moon. Admiral Kethamore's voice came across all frequencies. "Human vessel, you are outnumbered and outgunned. Surrender now and we will grant you a warrior's death." "Tell him he can have our answer in 30 seconds, Ji-Won said. But before they could reach firing range, another voice cut through the communications chaos. It was Admiral Hayes of the Human Defense Force, transmitted on an emergency channel from Earth. "Captain Ji-Won, you are ordered to withdraw immediately. Do not engage the Shalman fleet. Repeat, do not engage." The bridge went silent. Every crew member understood what this meant. Earth Command had decided that one death world wasn't worth starting an interstellar war. "Captain?" Una asked, her finger hovering over the weapons controls. Ji-Won looked at the tactical display. The Shalman fleet was moving into position for planetary bombardment. Below, War Chief Vexcaron and his warriors were still fighting an impossible battle against overwhelming odds. "Kyung-Ho, open a channel to Admiral Hayes," he said. The communication system connected with Earth across impossible distances. Admiral, Hayes appeared on the screen, her expression grave but determined. Captain, I understand your position, but you must withdraw. The Galactic Council has threatened sanctions against Earth if we interfere with Shalmon internal affairs. We cannot risk humanity's position in galactic politics for one world. Admiral, Jiwan said carefully, what if this isn't about one world? What if the Shalmon are testing the galaxy's response to Deathworld genocide? That's a risk we'll have. To evaluate later. Your orders are to return to Earth immediately. Jiwan looked around his bridge. Every crew member was watching him, waiting for his decision. These people had followed him into hell and back. They deserved to know what they were dying for. Admiral, I respectfully request clarification. Are you ordering me to abandon our allies while they're under attack? I'm ordering you to follow Earth's foreign policy and avoid an interstellar incident. And if the Shalmon destroy Vextar Prime, Hayes's expression softened slightly. Then we'll file a formal protest with the Galactic Council and impose economic sanctions. The crew exchanged glances. They all understood what Earth's politicians didn't. Deathworlders didn't respond to paperwork and economic pressure. They responded to strength. Admiral, Jiwan said, I need to ask my crew something. Kyung-ho, open an internal channel. He turned to face his people. You heard the orders. Earth Command wants us to withdraw and let the Shalmon finish their genocide. Anyone who wants to follow those orders can take a shuttle back to Earth. No questions asked, no consequences. The bridge was quiet for a long moment. Then Yuna spoke up. Captain, my grandmother survived the siege of New Shanghai because strangers were willing to fight for people they'd never met. I'm not abandoning the Vextari. My family comes from a colony world, Minho added. If Deathworlders don't protect each other, who will protect any of us? One by one, every crew member voiced their support. They understood the consequences. Court-martial, imprisonment, possible exile from Earth. But they also understood something more important. Admiral, Jiwan said, returning to the channel with Earth. My crew has voted. We're staying. Hayes closed her eyes for a moment. Captain, if you do this, Earth cannot support you. You'll be on your own. We've been on our own since we arrived. The only difference is now it's official. You'll be branded as rogue operators, pirates. Earth will deny any knowledge of your actions. That's fine, Admiral. History will judge whether we made the right choice. The communication ended. The Valkyrie continued its charge toward the Shalmon fleet, now officially an outlaw vessel crewed by criminals and traitors. 20 seconds to weapons range, Minho announced. But as they closed the distance, something unexpected happened. New contacts appeared on the sensors, ships dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. Captain, Chae-young called from her reconnaissance station. I'm reading 6 vessels, configuration unknown. The main screen shifted to show the newcomers. They were unlike any ships in human databases, organic-looking hulls that seemed to pulse with life, weapons that gleamed like crystalline growths, shields that shimmered like soap bubbles. They're hailing us, Kyung-ho reported. A new face appeared on the screen, definitely alien, but with eyes that held familiar intelligence. The being spoke in accented standard. Human vessel, this is War Leader Krex of the Krextani Liberation Fleet. We have come to stand with our Deathworld cousins. Jiwan felt a surge of hope. War Leader Krex, this is Captain Jiwan. How did you know we were here? Word of your actions has spread throughout Deathworld space. The Shalmon have enslaved our people for generations. Today, we fight together. More. Ships appeared. Vessels with hulls that crackled with electrical energy, others that seemed to be carved from single pieces of metal. Each one represented a different Deathworld species that had answered humanity's unintended call to arms. "By the void," Admiral Kethmore muttered as his sensors counted the new arrivals. "Where did they all come from?" His tactical officer was pale with shock. "Sir, we're now facing a combined fleet of Deathworld species. Our intelligence never predicted this level of cooperation." The newcomers spread out in a formation that surrounded the Shalmon fleet. Each species fought according to their world's unique characteristics. The Krextani used their natural acid production to corrode enemy hulls, while the Nethkari employed electromagnetic warfare that disabled Shalmon weapon systems. But it was the coordination that impressed Captain Jiwan most. These species had never worked together before, yet they were sharing targeting data and tactical information as if they'd trained together for years. "War Leader Krex," he said, "how are you coordinating so effectively?" We all learned the same. "Lesson, human friend. Deathworlders must stand together or we fall separately." The battle that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. It wasn't fleet against fleet. It was an ecosystem of predators working together to eliminate a threat. The Valkyrie served as the focal point, using human tactical doctrine to coordinate attacks by species that had never communicated before. Admiral Kethmore found himself fighting a battle he couldn't understand. Every time his ships adapted to one species' attacks, another type of Deathworlder would strike from an unexpected angle. His formation began to break apart under the coordinated assault. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving surrender demands from 7 different species. Some of them are threatening to board our ships." "Let them try," Kethmore snarled. "No primitive can match Shalmon technology." But he was wrong. When the first boarding pods attached to his ships, they carried warriors who had evolved on worlds that would kill most life forms. The Shalmon found themselves fighting enemies who could survive in vacuum, who could tear through bulkheads, with their bare claws, who treated the interior of a starship as just another hunting ground. The flagship Bone Crusher shuddered as something massive impacted its hull. Admiral Kethmore watched in disbelief as War Chief Vexcaron and Captain Jiwan appeared on his bridge, having somehow boarded during the chaos of battle. "Admiral," Jiwan said politely, "I believe you wanted to discuss terms of surrender." Vexcaron said nothing, but his presence filled the bridge with the promise of violence. The Shalman crew stepped back from their consoles, suddenly aware that they were prey animals in the presence of apex predators. "What? What are your terms?" Kethmore asked. "Complete withdrawal from Deathworld space," Jiwan replied. "Recognition of Deathworld sovereignty. Reparations for the damage you've caused." "And if I refuse?" War Chief Vexcaron spoke for the first time since boarding. "Then you learn what happens when Deathworlders stop playing by civilized rules." The Admiral looked around his bridge, seeing his crew's faces pale with fear. He was a career officer who had won dozens of battles against conventional enemies. But these weren't conventional enemies. "I accept your terms," he said quietly. As the Shalmon fleet began its withdrawal, Captain Jiwan received one final transmission from Admiral Hayes on Earth. "Captain, the Galactic Council is demanding explanations for this incident. How should I respond?" Jiwan looked out at the fleet of Deathworld ships that now filled the system. Representatives from a dozen different species, united by their refusal to be victims Tell them the age of easy conquest is over, Admiral. Tell them Deathworlders are no longer alone. 6 months after the Battle of Vextar Prime, Captain Jiwan stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Deathworld Defense Alliance headquarters. The massive station orbited Vextar Prime, built from the salvaged hulks of Shalmon, warships, and reinforced with materials from a dozen different worlds. Through the transparent aluminum windows, he could see ships from 7 different Deathworld species docked at the station. The sight still amazed him. Creatures that had evolved on the galaxy's most dangerous worlds working together as if they were old friends. Captain, War Chief Vex Karan approached, now wearing armor that combined Vextari tradition with human engineering. The council meeting is about to begin. They walked through corridors designed to accommodate the wildly different physiologies of Deathworld species. Krextani delegates left trails of mildly acidic residue that would have been deadly to most life forms. Nethkari representatives generated constant electrical fields that made human hair stand on end. The Thorek builders had scales that could deflect energy weapons, while the Zephyrian scouts moved so quickly they seemed to blur. The main council chamber was a marvel of engineering. Environmental controls maintained different atmospheric conditions for each species delegation. Translation systems converted dozens of languages in real time. Most importantly, the room was designed so that every species could see and hear every other species clearly. Brothers and sisters of the deadly worlds, War Chief Vex Karan called the meeting to order in his role as current council chairman. We gather to address the latest threat to our independence. The main display showed star charts of the outer rim. Red indicators marked worlds under attack by various aggressive species who thought Deathworlders made good slaves or gladiators. Krex leader. Cythera spoke first, her acidic voice translated into standard. The Dominion has attacked 3 Krextani colonies in the past month. They believe our resistance to chemical weapons makes us valuable as shock troops. Thunder Chief Valek of the Thorek builders gestured with hands that could crush steel. The Trade Federation has blockaded our worlds, demanding tribute in exchange for protection. They think we cannot survive without their supplies. Captain Jiwan listened to each report with growing anger. The galaxy's predators had learned nothing from the Shalmon defeat. They still saw Deathworlders as resources to be exploited rather than people to be respected. "What's our current fleet strength?" he asked. Jisoo, serving as the DDA's intelligence coordinator, pulled up tactical displays. 47 ships from all member species, not enough to fight conventional fleet battles, but sufficient for our purposes. Which are? Teaching the galaxy that Deathworlders don't fight fair, War Chief Vex Karan said with his rumbling laugh. The strategy had evolved from the lessons learned at Vextar Prime. Instead of meeting enemy fleets in open battle, DDA forces used their natural advantages to make conquest too expensive to be profitable. When the Dominion attacked Krextani worlds, they found that their ships couldn't operate in the acidic atmospheres. When they tried orbital bombardment, Krextani underground cities simply absorbed the damage and struck back with weapons that dissolved enemy hulls. When the Trade Federation blockaded Thorek space, they discovered that Thorek builders could construct new ships faster than the blockaders could destroy them. Worse, the new ships were built to Thorek specifications, armored like mobile fortresses and armed with weapons that fired chunks of their homeworld's ultra-dense metals. The pattern is clear, Jisoo continued. Every species that attacks Deathworlders loses more than they gain. Word is spreading that we're not worth the cost. But Captain G1 knew the real victory wasn't military. It was psychological. For the first time in galactic history, Deathworld species were working together. They shared technology, tactics, and most importantly, the knowledge that they weren't alone.